You are not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. I am going to tell you some things. And you're not going to believe these things that I tell you. And that's okay. You have good reason not to. But I need you to keep listening regardless of what you believe. I don't care if you're liberal, conservative, or somewhere in between. I don't care if you're a cat person, a dog person, or a tarantula person. Morning person or a night owl. iPhone or Android, Coke or Pepsi. I don't care. All I care about is that you listen to me till the end. Sounds good? Then let's begin. You might have heard that George Washington had wooden teeth. Shh, come on, admit it. He lost most of his teeth in his 20s and he had a set of dentures made out of wood. It is a disturbing visual. The founding father of the Commander-in-Chief and the first President of the United States. He was click-clacking his way through a ham sandwich. Except it wasn't through. In 2005, at the National Museum of Dentistry in Baltimore, laser scans were performed on the teeth of Mr. Washington, and they found that his dentures were made of gold, lead, hippopotamus, horse, and, oh my God, donkey teeth. His mouth was a petting zoo of nightmares. And upon learning this information, I want to ask you something. How did it feel to learn this new fact about George Washington's teeth? I stated a thing, I provided the evidence, and presumably, you now believe in the thing I stated. Presumably, your belief in the composition of George Washington's teeth has changed with little or no friction at all. Presumably, at the next party that you have with your good friends and George Washington's teeth come up, you're probably gonna share this newfound knowledge to your fellow partygoers, right? Terrific. Let's continue. But wait, what if I told you that George Washington had another set of false teeth? What if I told you that this other set wasn't made from wood, ivory, or any of the aforementioned materials? What if I told you that these were made from the teeth of slaves? And I can come up with sources too. Now, let's try again. How did it feel to learn this fact about George Washington? Any more friction that I mentioned earlier? Before we go any further, allow me to reiterate. I am not here to convince you that George Washington was a bad person. I could go through all my cited sources and cherry-pick arguments that either deify or demonize, like myself, George Washington. I could paint a portrait of a monster, or I could exonerate a patriot. But as I said before, I don't care. It's not the point. The point is to give you an emotional barometer of how you feel when I presented you with new ideas. Because you might have noticed that the first fact about George Washington's teeth was rather easy to accept. I would even wager that when I told you about the first fact, you accepted it without question. And there are a lot of you political folks out there who are just like this. I'm talking about you, DDS. But when I told you the second fact, you immediately checked my sources, and you are now furiously composing an informed yet very angry retort which you will boldly deliver to me and spam my inbox off. But that's okay. And that's all part of it. Let's try a few more. What if I told you that Napoleon Bonaparte was not short, and in fact he was 5'7", which was taller than the average Frenchman of that time? During the period of invasions, the minimum height to invade countries was 5 flat. And I have sources for that. What if I told you that Thomas Crapper, the guy who invented the flush toilet, did not use that word crap, nor was he the person behind the crapper at all. His legacy wasn't shit. And what if I told you that houseflies lived for a month and not 24 hours? And I can come up with sources too. What if I also told you that humans don't explode in a vacuum, nor do they boil? They simply pass out from a lack of oxygen and then we die. But hey, wait, I'm not human, so that does not impact me at all. Again, as you read these facts and you take stock of how you feel, I guess you softened to the last few fairly easily. Let's try a few more, and then we are done. There is zero evidence that Jesus was born on December 25. I don't care what the church says, I don't care what all the Christians say. What if I told you that the Pledge of Allegiance was written by a socialist? Confused now? And what if the 6 of the 7 justices who voted in favor of Roe versus Wade were Republican appointed? How did those last 3 feel? Depending on your beliefs, depending it may have put some of you, well, to the point of explosion. At the very least, you can concede that it felt different to hear those statements compared to the ones about Napoleon or houseflies. Right? Why? Why do we easily soften to some ideas but not to others? Why do we gnash our teeth when presented with evidence counter to our beliefs? Why do we not only ignore this evidence but dig our heels in deeper and believe more strongly in the opposing argument? Why would providing more evidence make someone less likely to believe in an idea? It seems backward and batshit fucking bonkers to me. Well, it turns out that batshit fucking bonkers is a name in the world of neuroscience, and it's called the backfire effect. And it's a well-documented psychological behavior. A few years ago, at the University of Southern California's Brain and Creativity Institute, a study was conducted where some participants were placed into this really large MRI machine, and once inside they were presented with counter-arguments to strongly held political beliefs. A few examples include, laws restricting gun ownership should be made more restrictive. Another was, gay marriages should not be legalized. As participants read these counter-arguments, various parts of their brains were scanned for activity, and what the study revealed was that the same part of the brain that responds to a physical threat responds to an intellectual one. Let that sink in. This area of the brain is known as the amygdala, and it is the emotional core of your mind. Unfortunately, it makes us biologically wired to react to threatening information in the same way we would react to being attacked by a predator or being torn apart by a bear. From an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense. If you were a caveman and another caveman threw a boulder at your head, you wouldn't react biologically debating the pros and cons of getting brained, would you? Core beliefs are the beliefs which people cherish the most deeply. They usually develop from childhood and are compounded by life experiences. Core beliefs are inflexible, rigid, and incredibly sensitive to being challenged. When I told you that George Washington's dentures were made from animal bones, it probably didn't ruffle many feathers. But when I suggested that they were made from slave teeth, I am guessing it caused strife for some of you. There are obvious cultural reasons for this, and slavery is it's a really freaking hot, sensitive, hot button issue. But there are biological reasons as well. The amygdala of your brain is screaming, battle stations! Some of you may have held a worldview that George Washington is a patriot and a hero. By presenting negative information about him, it challenged your worldview. Your brain loves consistency. It builds a worldview like we build a house. It is a conduction of a foundation and a frame with windows and doors, and it knows exactly how everything fits together. If a new piece is introduced and it doesn't fit, the whole house falls apart. Your brain protects you by rejecting that piece. It then builds a fence and a moat, and it refuses to let in any visitors. This is why we have the backfire effect. It is a biological way of protecting your worldview. Just remember that your worldview isn't a perfect house that was built to last forever. It was a cheap condo, and most of the time, it'll turn to shit and crap. So, what do we know about this? Some of you have probably been nodding along in agreement, waiting for me to deliver a series of clever, competent ways to offset the backfire effect. The disappointing truth is that I don't have much advice for you. I don't have a way to change the behavior of 7.5 billion people carrying their beliefs around like precious gems wrapped in hand grenades. Sure, there are ways of changing people's beliefs and minds in a manner that is more effective than others other than brainwashing, but ultimately, they all fall short. It is compounded by the internet, where anything can be cited as a source and every disagreement degrades into a room full of orangutans throwing feces at one another. I'm looking at you, Dilawans and the Tertards. The best I can do is to make you aware of it so that you can identify the backfire effect in your own brain, which isn't easy. The mind can separate the emotional cortex from the logical ones. And one could argue that this emotional underbelly is what makes us human. But I would argue that it is also what makes us animals. I sometimes pretend the amygdala is found right in my pinky toe, not in my brain. And when a core belief is challenged, I imagine it yelling insane things at me. Can you imagine your toe yelling at you? I just let it yell. I let it have its moment. I let the emotional cortex fight its little fight. And then I listen. And then I change. Because this beautiful universe of ours is so amazingly awesome. And we're all in it together. We're all going in the same direction. I'm not here to take control of the wheel or to tell you what to believe. No, I'm just here to tell you that it's okay to stop, to listen, to change. This is the Devil's Advocate. Thank you for listening.